What's going on, guys? Kento from T1G here, and today we're going to be learning about effective skill builds. If you're completely new to warriors, I'd recommend checking out Hakurai's warrior guide by clicking here if you have annotations on, or click the link in the description. His guide is quite informative and will give you a basic understanding of how warrior skills function. Once you're finished, feel free to come back to this video to get a little more detail. So, for the purpose of keeping things relatively simple and easy to understand, I'll be categorizing the different skills into 5 different categories, which is very high, high, average, low, and very low. As a little bit of a disclaimer though, please keep in mind that these are my own personal opinions based on the time and experience I've had playing the Korean version, and are by no means a law that you have to follow. This is simply a guideline to help players who feel relatively lost and would like more of a direction on where they should be putting their skill points in. Alright, so the first skill you'll be noticing is a skill called Heavy Strike. You're unfortunately forced to learn this in the beginning of the game as part of a quest. Overall, its priority is very low in my opinion, low to very low, because you rarely have enough time to cast this during PvP situations and even in PvE situations, and even when you do, the damage output for the FP cost isn't exactly worth it in my opinion. It's a visually appealing skill though, but overall, low priority. The very next skill you'll be noticing is a skill called Chopping Kick. This, being one of your cancels, is very high priority, basically as top as it gets. As a cancel, it can interrupt most animations and skills that you do, and when you're casting it, if it successfully lands, it also puts the opponent in a bound state, which is a little bit different from a knockdown. I'll have to get more detail with that in a different video, but overall, this skill definitely high priority and max for sure. Once you get this skill maxed out, the ultimate version of it gives you a really nice distance increase whenever you're using the skill. So whenever you have that glowing after image effect, you're always going to get that little distance increase whenever the skill's off cooldown. This is very, very useful for chasing opponents as they try to get away from you, and just being able to knock them down again, just for that recatch, and then being able to apply your damage right after that, as shown here. In addition, if you watch my previous video about animation canceling your spinning slash, that's another reason why you definitely want to max the skill out. Overall, just a lot of utility that you can get out of this skill. The next skill you'll be seeing on your skill list is a skill called Shield Strike. This skill, very low priority. It's a very, how to put it, meh. It's meh. That's all I can say. The only time it would be useful is if you were to get the very last level of it, but even then, you'd still have to hit them with the first and second hit before you can even get the stun off on the third hit. Overall, it's not worth the time to cast it, and if you really needed a stun, you have better stuns later on in your skills. The next skill that's related to that is Charged Shield Strike. This skill is low priority. It's fun to use, but very gimmicky. The thing is, again, it's one of those skills that takes a long time to cast, and the return for it isn't all that worth it. It's about a 0.5 second to a second cast time to actually charge and cast it. And in that time, you can be casting any one of your other ultimate skills, which also have CC on them. And overall, just get a much better effect out of those skills. Basically, just don't get Shield Strike until you're very late game and you have most of your warrior tree maxed out. Uppercut Shield Strike is an average to low priority skill for me. It blocks while casting a potential launch effect on the enemy. Because of this, it's useful for being able to attack and defend at the same time in certain situations. Not all classes will be used, and the launch rate isn't the best, but when it does succeed, it's very satisfying. Forward Slash is one of the iconic skills for Warrior, and it's very high as a priority. Seeing as it's another one of the 4 cancels, it's great for gap closing and damage and FP recovery early on. The next skill, Sideways Cut, has an average priority. It can be used to fast cast certain skills, but the damage output isn't worth the time it takes to cast it. Fun fact is this skill used to have an iframe back during the open beta, the first few months of the open beta, but they had removed it as part of a nerf. Counter is another average priority skill. It has good uses when it works, but that's when it works. Regarding PvP, its damage isn't high, meaning its only use is for CC. And because of that, you want to make sure that the time that you're spending to cast a CC skill is actually working. The thing with counter though is its landing rate hasn't been the most reliable for me. I've had more success using other skills, for example the cancels, than using a skill like counter. Where you'll most likely be using the skill and seeing it be successful is once you get the very last rank of it, called energy counter. This version of it will send out a long stream of a long knock-up stream that will actually knock the opponent up, but it does have a longer casting time than the normal counter because you basically have to hold S and left click until the full skill goes off. So because of this, it has a long startup time before it actually works. Your next skill, Spinning Slash, is another very high priority skill. It's one of your main damaging skills. Actually, it is your main damaging skill, and you're going to want to max this out as soon as possible in order to effectively DPS both in PvP and PvE. Ultimate Spinning Slash, which is a branch off of a Spinning Slash, is also a very high priority. It's essentially a free casted Spinning Slash that also has a sped up animation. In addition to Ultimate Spinning Slash, another branch off is Jump Slash, which is also a high priority. It supports your main damaging skill, Spinning Slash, by being able to cast it at a third of the FP cost of your normal Spinning Slash. Whirlwind Slash is another situational branch off of Spinning Slash. I would give it an average rating. There is certain situations where it's useful, and it basically extends the range of your Spinning Slash by being able to cancel your counter to go directly into Spinning Slash with a giant lunge forward. Early on, it's helpful for fast casting your Spinning Slash if you need to do it while leveling, but I mean, it's alright. It's an alright skill. It's only one skill point anyway, so it doesn't hurt to get it, I guess. But you won't be using this all the time. Takedown is another very high priority skill. It's going to be one of your main CC skills, and it's kind of what makes you or breaks you as a warrior. Early on, you'll only be needing 1 point in this, but once you get your character to starting to cap out your character, you may want to invest in putting some extra points into the takedown because the damage isn't too bad, as well as the fact that it adds in extra range to the point where once it's max, it's the same range as your double takedown, which is pretty far. Instant grapple is a high priority skill to get. You don't need to get it right away once it's available because it's kind of expensive SP wise, but of course it helps to grab your opponents faster, so you could see why that would be helpful. Double takedown is another high priority skill. It lengthens your CC duration as well as increased damage and AoE. Recommended to learners at 1 point after you finish your cancels. Your guard, or block as I like to call it, has an average to high priority. It's kind of situational because it both helps with defense and your movement speed while blocking. Whenever you receive an attack while blocking, you essentially get plus 15 defense at the max level, which is very helpful in a lot of situations. The problem is, it's the times where whenever you're fighting an opponent and you're fighting an opponent that you're not able to block all the time. And that's where it's kind of it kind of drops down in the priority rating. And there's also even some cases where you're not able to walk all the time while blocking. And so that's kind of why it gets the average rating. But for every other situation, that's where it would be a high rating in my opinion. Hilt Smash would be a low to average priority. I know I use it a lot in some of my videos. But even so, it's more for like a stylish and BM kind of play style. Just so you can stun them and then get behind them and proceed to spinning slash them. But Overall, I'd rate the skill to be low to average. There's definitely more important skills you can spend your skill points on. Same deal with shield counter. It's also a low skill. Meh. Let's just move on from that. Furious Blow, also low to average in the counter tree. Again, helps in very specific situations against certain classes, but not all the time. Shield Charge, very high priority. Another one of your cancels you want to max this ASAP. It's a great CC, highly used as a warrior for sure. Very easy to use with just W and right click, and inflicts a stagger for about half a second. But overall, you're gonna be using this just to open up and then start your other CCs for your DPS combos. Like a lot of people would shield charge into grab, or shield charge into ground smash, or shield charge into whatever. Very useful combo opener for sure, and also great for distance and gap closing and gap creating. Get the skill, max it. When you're maxing out the shield charge tree, you don't necessarily need to get shield push. You can actually skip the skill. It's an average priority. It only helps in certain situations, and it somewhat helps with keeping your movement rhythm whenever you're doing the fast movement, which I will do a guide on later. But you don't need this skill. It's kind of a skill if you want it, you can take it. Charging Slash I would put on the low priority. Going any further than the second level can hinder some playstyles due to the extra attack while blocking. I don't have any more video footage of this because I've since reformatted since I used to have this skill, but there was a lot of situations in which when I had it, it would get in the way all the time. So I definitely wouldn't recommend taking it unless you're willing to deal with the disadvantage of having it. Successive Charging Slash is also another low priority skill. I believe the SP can be spent better in other skills. The next skill, Deep Thrust, very high priority. Again, one of your other cancels. Arguably probably the least useful of all your cancels, but still useful nonetheless. I definitely recommend maxing it for sure. Jump Thrust is a low to average priority skill. It's useful only in certain situations. Sometimes it can get in the way whenever you're doing PvP due to the fact that it will automatically cast whenever you're doing your Deep Thrust. The knockback effect while doing Jump Thrust doesn't work during PvP, so this is kind of a reason why a lot of people don't like to take it. Back in the day, you could get it and still be able to not jump thrust and only jump thrust optionally by holding F whenever you're doing Deep Thrust. But since they did a certain change, they made it so that no matter what, whenever you're holding F while doing Deep Thrust, you will instantly cast your ground smash. And overall, it would just destroy your FP cost. So it wasn't worth it to have jump thrust anymore. So overall, I just give it a low to average rating. Charging Thrust would be a high priority skill. It's very useful for getting around in and out of fights, as well as a last level enabling you to block attacks while dashing. You might remember this move most prominently from some of my videos whenever you see me dashing around and killing a lot of people. It's great. It's definitely great for doing that, just getting around really fast. Some of the off branches for it are the Quick Charging Thrust, which is also an average priority. It's more of a utility skill. High SP costs for just more of a utility. And then the next skill that branches off is Double Charge, which is also average, also utility skill, basically extending the range of which you're able to charge by adding in an extra charge. War Cry would be a low priority skill. It's only used for drawing aggro or to literally taunt people while doing PvP. For that reason alone, I plan to get it just to BM taunt people. Like, hey, come get me. Hi. Ground Roar, very high priority, should be the first skill you put a point into and only need one skill level. It's great for drawing aggro, just in general, just to pull mobs into a small group. I would say if warriors were good at anything better than any other class, that would be it, at grouping up mobs. We're very, very excellent at doing that, for sure. So here is a skill that I find to be underrated for the leveling phase. Ground slash was a very useful skill back in the betas because it had an extremely high amount of AoE back then. It's since been nerfed, but even so, the damage is extremely high during the leveling phase. It scales down once you get higher levels and later content. But if we still have the free skill reset available during launch, I would definitely recommend skilling this up during your leveling phase until you unlock Twilight Scar. It doesn't have a capped out amount of enemies that it can hit, so if you're grinding with a party or grinding solo, either or, you can pull as many mobs as you possibly can and just kill them all off at the same time. I used this during my leveling during CBT2 on NA, and I still found it very, very useful and even somewhat faster than just going with the basic spinning slash build. Fitness training is a high priority skill. It gives you extra HP, plus 10 HP per point you put into it, as well as +1 defense to either close ranged, far ranged, or magic. The extra HP means more damage on your ground smash as well as your spinning slash, because they both do extra damage based on your maximum HP at their maximum levels for the respective skills. And the extra bonus of fitness training is the extra defense. I mean, that's just an extra bonus tacked on, but overall what you really want is that extra HP. Meditation, very low priority, honestly just a way to suicide. Don't put pointing points in it. It pales in comparison to the Valkyrie's version, and it makes me cry. Just don't get it. Piercing Spear would be a high priority skill. It's a great combo opener if it lands, a great range combo opener at that point. And damage isn't high, it's mostly used specifically for CC effects. The only problem with it is early on, it has a huge FP cost. So early on, you're going to have troubles casting this all the time and then having room or enough FP left over to actually damage your opponent. So it becomes more useful the more FP you get. But yeah, early on it's going to be hard to find room to cast this in your build. Frenzy Charge. Scars of Dusk is a very high priority skill, amazing in PvE, but falls off in PvP later on, but still very useful for zoning. The bleed is quite strong as well, and overall most people just don't want to get close to you while you're doing Twilight Scar, so get the skill, it's great. It's no downsides to using it. You get an extra 10 defense buff while doing it, as well as being able to recover your FP for the target's hit. Definitely get a skill. High priority for sure. Very high. Whoops, almost forgot about Ground Smash. Ground Smash is also a very high priority skill. It has very decent AoE radius, as well as being able to put somebody in a bound state. The damage isn't too bad. It scales based on your maximum HP at the max level. And once you get the ultimate version of it, you're able to cast it a second time. Therefore, being able to apply that down attack damage to take the damage even further than it already is. So overall, decent skill. Also, don't forget the slow that it applies as well. It applies a minus 40% slow at the max level, which is very, very good for keeping people close to you or keeping them far away from you. Okay, so that should be all the skills in our skill list. I'll go ahead in the bottom list two different skill builds. One for leveling if we have the skill resets, and then one that I would recommend after you use skill resets or if we don't have skill resets, and one that should be pretty solid to be able to take you through the game until you start getting more comfortable with being able to branch off on your own. Thanks guys for watching, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I'll try to answer them. I'm usually on top of my comment game when the videos are first posted, but sometimes there's a lot of comments lately and I can't respond to you guys all, but note that I do read them. I do read your comments. I like reading my comments. and I like interacting with the people who check in on my videos. Thanks again, guys, for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.